American-made products are the name of the game for me and the Western Huntsman. I really will go out of my way and spend more money to buy things that are American-made and keeps jobs and things like that right here in the United States of America. That brings us to Vantage Point Archery. If you haven't listened yet, wherever you listen to your podcast as, go find episode 201, Vantage Point Archery with Ryan Corkwell and Jeff Stringer. Those are the founders of Vantage Point Archery, and these are great dudes. They'll give you a lot of the insight and information that you need on picking out your broadhead for this season. Don't wait any longer, guys, because season is going to be here before we know it. It's almost here. I am going to be shooting the VPA Omega with bleeders for this elk season. They have the single bevels, 2-blade, 3 blades. These are great broadheads. They're American-made. They're tried and true. They're tested. I've been shooting them all summer. Really impressed with this company, and I couldn't be happier having them as a sponsor on this show. Happy to partner with them. Thanks, guys. Ladies and gentlemen, are you ready to make this elk season your best season yet? If you answered yes, my friends, you are in the right place. From the Western Huntsman Podcast, brought to you by Phelps Game Calls, welcome to the School of September, the most comprehensive elk hunting series on the planet. We bring you the world's top archery elk experts to talk strategy, calling, and everything else to get you one step closer to some of your wildest dreams. From the Broken Time Studio to your knowledge toolbox, class is in session. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this episode of the Western Huntsman Podcast, the next installment of the School of September for 2025. And I'm pretty excited about the guys I've got on for this episode, and it's kind of cool how it came together. But we're gonna talk about that. Guys, brought to you by Eastman's Hunting Journals and coming at you from the Broken Time Studio right here in Northwest Montana. I'd like to quickly shout out that Phelps Game Calls is the one and only actual sponsor of the School of September. You'll hear the other ads, but School of September is specifically brought to you by Phelps Game Calls. And since we're talking elk hunting, you might want to jump on PhelpsGameCalls.com and check out the elk call. They've got a bunch of new bugle tubes that have come out this year. I have not tried them yet. I'm gonna be trying these new bugle tubes here shortly, but I haven't got them yet. But they're pretty cool from what I've heard on videos and whatnot. And then they've still got all the tried and true calls out there, like your Renegade tubes and the Maverick Reed and the pink and the black and the gray. For those of you just starting out and just wanting to get into calling elk, if you're looking at like Phelps.com, PhelpsGameCalls.com, what you want to do is you want to get a few different types of reeds and try a few different styles out to see what best works in your mouth. Everybody has like a different palate, right? Your mouth sizes are different and everything. So I always recommend give the black, the gray, the pink, and the Maverick a try. Between those four, you're going to find the right reed for you. And then you want to kind of what I recommend is sticking to one reed for me. And everybody has kind of a different thing or a different take on that. But I use that Maverick, and sometimes I use the pink, and I do all the cow calling and bugling and everything through one reed. And my trusty, very sentimental bugle tube called the Renegade from Phelps Game Calls. So anyway, hopefully that helps you guys. Check it out at PhelpsGameCalls.com. And again, at checkout, you can use promo code Huntsman10 to get you 10% off those calls. You have plenty of time from now till September to become very proficient on your calls if you treat it like an instrument and give it 10, 15 minutes a day. And you'll be able to call in bowls left and right. Right, guys? What do you think?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so I've kind of lost my voice, so bear with me, guys. But for this month's installment of School of September, I've been kind of Facebook buddies with somebody named Jon Palmquist. Did I pronounce that right?
You got it.
Man, I nailed it for once. It's about time I got one. And he told me about this guy that he's been hunting with for a long time, who's been mentoring him, and they've been out there slaying elk all over. If I'm not mistaken, it's in Colorado. Is that right, fellas?
Yes.
So Rob Gonzales is on the show, and to hear Jon tell it, it sounds like he's been a pretty proficient elk hunter over the years. And we thought it would be cool to get us all three on the show and talk about elk and what he does that makes him successful. So, guys, I appreciate you joining me. This is going to be a fun episode. Thank you.
You bet. Yeah. Thanks for having us.
Why don't we start, Jon? Why don't we start with you? Why don't you give us a quick overview of who you are, and then we'll move over to Rob and go from there.
Well, I'm just another dude that enjoys hunting elk. I live on the Front Range out here in Colorado. Moved back up here about 10 years ago. Spent about 10 years out in Grand Junction on the Western Slope, which is where I first started hunting. I was in my late 20s back then, and got into rifle hunting. Had no mentorship whatsoever. Just had that, primal urge and instinct within me as a dude, an average dude, to get out in the high country. And I embarked on that adventure on my own with no guidance other than reading a few books, and the YouTube thing wasn't really a thing back then. As far as I knew, I was probably behind the curve in that respect as well as hunting. But anyways, struggle bus to loser town for many years, rifle hunting.
I'm going to plagiarize those lines.
Yeah. Can be utilized across the board in many ways. But I got into archery a few years later. And when I got out in September, it just opened up a whole new reality for me that you don't get to experience during rifle hunts. And I think I've rifle hunted maybe twice in the last 15 years, as much as I hate to say it. Practically every year. I missed a few years here and there, but practically every year since then, I've been out archery hunting, trying to figure it out. And that learning curve is pretty wild, but each time you get a run in with elk in the high country, it just reignites. It puts away all of that doubt that you've had. And just reignites that fire. When I moved to the Front Range, I quit hunting on the Western Slope. I reached out on Facebook and other platforms to kind of figure out where I was going to hunt. And I picked a unit and I inquired about it, and trying to garner some advice. And Robert was nice enough to lend a hand in that respect. There's a certain area that I wanted to hunt that, had some sentimental aspect to it for a variety of reasons, related to my father. But, anyways, I went out and I checked the area out, and, I had some questions, and Robert helped me out in that arena, and we became quick friends. And that's all she wrote, man. I mean, the amount of stuff I learned from this gentleman is incredible. I'm still a great white hunter. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't see success as often as I would like to, but the opportunities have broadened quite a bit with what I've learned that he shared with me. I listen to a lot of podcasts due to the nature of my job. And I've heard a lot of professionals talking about stuff that I've learned stuff from. But still, I mean, Robert has been the backbone in my learning process. And that's why I reached out to you. He's a humble dude, he's not trying to put himself out there, but I feel like that the majority of elk hunters, listen to podcasts like this because they want to make them, they want to give themselves some kind of advantage, and that comes from knowledge.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. got to bring Robert to the forefront in that respect.
You're super fortunate in the fact that, you kind of put yourself out there in search of somebody to offer some, advice or give you a hand here and there, as you were getting rolling into this whole elk hunting thing and getting somebody that was willing to mentor you. There's so many hunters that they start getting into the sport, or the lifestyle, whatever you want to refer to it as, and they don't have that mentorship. They don't have somebody that is able or willing and friendly enough. I think people they're too protective of their hunting spots, or they're too protective of they own this unit and that public land is just mine because I've been hunting there for 20 years and I'm not taking some new guy out. I think that happens a lot, and that's what makes finding a good solid mentor really difficult for folks that are just trying to get into it, and so I think that's awesome. You were able to find Robert, and he was willing to do that, and it speaks a lot about you, Robert, which brings us to you. Why don't you give us your background and tell us a little bit about you?
Well, I'm 63 years old. Been archery hunting for 40 years, I believe, 40 plus years. And calling, in the beginning, there wasn't a lot of calling. There wasn't a lot of, it was all in its infancy at the time. So it was a learning curve there for me too.
Mm-hmm.
But my father was a meat hunter, so every time I hunted with him, with a gun, we were meat hunter. My dad shot a big 6-point bull one year and left the rack in the field. So
that's crazy.
My brother went up and got it and brought it home.
Oh, good.
I was a little kid then, but it always sparked my interest in something I wanted to do. And he was a mentor to me, but he didn't know what we know now. He didn't use calls or anything like that back then. And back then in Colorado, there weren't that many elk back then either. There was a lot of deer, but not a lot of elk. And Colorado's done a really good job of building the elk population in the state, and that's a good thing because more opportunities for more people.
Sure.
But I think that like Jon said, I get people reach out to me all the time, and I'm not the kind of guy that you mentioned that there's the guys that are protective of their areas and that kind of stuff. And I look at it like the more knowledge you have, if people don't know what you know as far as calling and behavior and what elk do, it doesn't matter if there's the way I look at it is that elk hunting or archery is low impact anyway. So
yeah.
And so if you got 2 or 3 guys in your unit or your area, a lot of guys get discouraged and get mad and don't want to deal with that. Then they leave, or they're mad at the people who are in that area. I don't do that. I use those guys to my advantage. I feel like they don't know what I know, or if they do know what I know, maybe I can learn something from them if I end up talking to them.
Sure.
But either way, I use them to my advantage, and not, I don't want to intrude on their hunting area either. But like I said, it's all low impact anyway. So, 90% of the time when an elk spooks off, they don't even know why it's spooked off.
Mm-hmm.
When a cow gets nervous and she runs off and gives the alarm bark, and then they all go, but they don't know why. They're just don't know it's time to go.
Yeah.
And so I've learned a lot. I've had a lot of experience, and I believe the best thing that's out there that can teach you the most about elk is elk themselves. I mean, if you really pay attention to what they do, how they do it, why they do it, when they do it, that's where you're going to learn the most. Pay attention to the calls they make. And everybody gets hung up on on a bugle or making the perfect bugle. Well, you know, you can sit there and listen to elk bugle. And you can look at your buddy and say, that's not an elk, that's a hunter. And then all of a sudden you're doing your thing, and an elk pops up right above you. You know, you're like, oh, that was an elk.
I know.
You know?
It surprises you. That one thing, the elk will humble me, over and over again. But sometimes, I'll do all this practicing with my calls or whatever, and oh man, I'm sounding really good now. I'm going to be able to call in a bull anywhere, and then you get out there and you listen to some of these bulls, and it's like, man, why did I even practice? They sound like that. I could just, it's so much fun though.
Yeah, well, and they're just like us. I mean, you meet somebody that has a real deep voice, or something like that. Well, the elk are the same way. Some of those bulls have a deep voice. And the other thing is, the one thing I think that guys get hung up on the most is the fact that there's a sequence that you have to adhere to during the season. So in other words, what I'm saying is elk are, bulls are bugling in the fall, and that's all they do, But when you think about an elk when it drops in the spring, now in the spring, when a calf drops in the spring, what's the first thing it's going to do is learn elk dialogue. They're going to learn that school that they're in as calves all speak the same language. Those calves aren't running around bugling. If it's a bull elk that's dropped on the ground, he's not running around bugling. Mm-hmm. He's doing what we call cow calls, but it's just the elk's language, and they all learn that as a calf. So and they speak that in every single month of the year.
Yeah.
So I've had bull elk bugling, and on my birthday, December 15th, I've had bulls bugling. So everybody kind of thinks that once the rut's over, sure, it calms down, and sure, maybe they don't bugle as much, but that doesn't even matter, because the dialogue that they learned in their infancy, they use every day. So they're whether what we call cow calling that's just elk dialogue that they use every day.
Yeah.
So and the cows bugle in the spring. I mean, now when the calves are dropping and you hear a bugle, it's a cow bugling to her calves. And I live in Colorado, and I'm fortunate enough to live up in the mountains where I'm literally minutes away from elk country. I mean, I can jump in my truck and be in elk country in 10 minutes.
Yeah.
So I get to spend a lot of time in the spring, in the fall, in the winter, all the phases of the seasons, and observe them and listen to them. And that's where you learn. Like I said, I think that elk are going to be your best teachers. I mean, you have guys that are proficient in calling. They're good at what they do, but the best teacher is going to be an elk. So, and I always encourage people to go on to YouTube and pull up videos of elk doing their thing and learn from there, not from me trying to tell them how to make a call. I can help you with technique. So if you and I are sitting here and I hand you a call, and you're a new caller and you're just learning, you can make sounds, but you're not proficient. You don't really know what you're doing, but you can make sounds. You're making the reed, you're breaking the reed over and making it make noise. Well, I can sit here and listen to you and help you with technique, so you can get the deep guttural sound, or you can add voice to it, or try this, try that. Those are the things I think that when a guy learns those kind of things, that's what's going to help you in the field.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So and like I said, all the elk sound different anyway, so it doesn't really matter how how good, who's to say that you're a good caller or a bad caller? I used to do out calling contests all the time, and I joined a bunch of. I won a bunch of contests, and that didn't even matter at that point. But the what I'm getting at is, I entered a calling contest once, and the call manufacturer. The guys that were judging the calls were from a call manufacturer. Well, I wasn't using their calls. I won't mention their names, but I wasn't using their calls, but they could tell that I wasn't using their calls because their calls are pretty specific. And and I didn't win anything at that calling contest. And the guy that did one came up to me and said, "Dude, what was he listening to? you were way." He said, "I know you because I've seen you at other calling contests before." He goes, "And that kind of pissed me off that you came to this one because I knew I didn't have a chance." And then he won. And then after that, I decided that, you know what, I'm not even going to join any more calling contests because, it didn't seem fair. But, and it wasn't only him that came up to me and said, and I'm not saying that I'm the best caller or anything like that. I'm not saying that, but, I outcalled those guys basically. I didn't win. And I was really upset or pissed off about it really, but it did, put a little kink in my hose because of it. But what was gratifying was the guy that did win come up to me and say, "Hey man, I don't know what they were listening to." And then afterwards, talking to everybody, I found out that all the guys that were on the judging were call specific guys. So
yeah, I've seen a lot of those, and over the years, it's become pretty obvious that the guys that win all the big competitions, the calling competitions, are not necessarily, and this is the same for turkeys too, by the way, but they're not necessarily the ones that are killing all the elk. Sometimes they are, but sometimes they're not. I called in a bull before I knew what the heck I was doing. I couldn't even get an arrow. I was so surprised a bull came in. I couldn't even get a shot off on him. But I had no idea. I was using one of those. Gosh, what the heck is the name? I think it was that Terminator tube thing. And I sounded like a coyote that just had its tail stepped on. And in comes this bull, and so it just speaks to, you really don't need to be like an expert caller with all the proper functions of what we as humans look to be considered a good caller. Because if you go out, like we were talking earlier, if you go out in the woods and you're actually listening to elk, I love what you talked about, observing elk in the spring and observing elk outside of hunting seasons or even during hunting seasons, just to listen, because they are really the best teacher. But you'll learn quick that they don't have perfect type bugles every time. Sometimes it's kind of cool to hear them when they do that, but it's usually some weird, raspy, screamy, almost. I've heard elk that sound like elephants. I've heard elk that sound like rabbits in distress. I've heard elk that sound like race cars. It's just, there's no like rhyme or reason behind the calls other than that they know what they're saying. And I think that really what it boils down to is the emotion that they're putting into that sound is what's communicating. It's not really the sound itself. I don't know if that makes sense, but Rob, when you everybody kind of has like their go-to approach for September, archery elk season. Some guys like to sit on wallows. Some people like to sit on trails in a tree stand. Some guys are spot and stock. Some guys are callers, and some guys they go out and they hang out in kind of one area and just try to cold call and see if they get lucky with something coming and checking them out. Other people like to cover a lot of country and locate bugle and find a response and then react from there. What would you say is your thing? What has been the process that you use in September? What has been the thing that works best for you and kind of is your standard strategy every year?
Well, I'm like I said, I'm fortunate enough to live minutes away from elk country, so I actually have 10, if not more, different spots that I go to. I used to scout and prepare and do all those things early in the season, but I don't even do that anymore because I already know where they are and I already know what they do because I've patterned them. Like I said, I've been doing this for 40 years. And I've patterned them. They do the same thing every year in the same area. If they're not in my one of my go-to spots, I go to my next go-to spot. If they're not there, they'll be in the next one. One of my spots will have the action that I'm looking for, and then sometimes in the season, for whatever reason, if they're not in a specific area that I've been working them from the years before, give them a week. They'll might be back there in a week, that kind of thing. But I don't scout anymore. Like I said, but that's just because I'm fortunate enough to live right there where the elk are. So that makes it a lot easier for me. Where as a guy that like Jon that lives on the Front Range doesn't have that kind of thing. He can't just run out in the afternoon and go, okay, I'm gonna go see if there's elk over here, go see if there's elk over there. But I pretty much already have an idea of where they are, and I hunted a new area. Well, I didn't hunt it. My brother drew a tag for Area 201, which is a trophy unit here in Colorado. And I went up there with him for 3 days, and we called in elk every day.
Oh, wow.
And,
It took what, 25 points?
25 points to draw that unit, yeah.
That is crazy. 25 points? Holy cow.
Yeah.
I don't have enough life left to get there.
Well, I've got 24 points right now, and so, but I haven't. Like I said, I went up there for the last year, and it's a new area for me. I hadn't hunted it before, but I called in elk every day there with him, and we passed on every single elk that we called in just because it's a trophy unit. So he was looking at a 350 plus class bull if and they're there. So that's what he was after, and he didn't end up filling his tag, and he hunted the whole season. I only hunted 3 days up there, but I called in elk every day up there, and it was a blast. And like I said, it's not. I think technique is more important than getting it perfect. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Knowing
technique,
So learning different sounds that they make so many different sounds, and a lot of the let's do a little scenario here. Let's say you're hunting, and you're working a big 6-point bull, and he's out there a couple hundred yards, and you're moving in on him, and you get close, and you know where he is because he's sounding off pretty often, and you're calling from your position. And then, so let's say the bull's coming in and he approaches you. A lot of guys that I talk to and that hunt elk and are archery hunters, they button it up. They stop calling, and the bull comes in and gets, he's expecting to see you or hear you. And I had him so close, Robert, and then he just turned and walked away. I said, well, did you quit calling? Well, yeah, when he got close, I did. Well, why? He's expecting to see you. Well, I didn't want to spook him. Well, he's expecting to see something. So that's this hunter, right? That's just what I do. I will work a bull and I will get him to do what I want him to do by moving around and not quit calling. I've had them come in silent. All of a sudden they're there. They see me and they spook off. I start calling. They're not real sure what he saw. He knows something wasn't right. But I'll keep calling.
That happens to me all the time. Yeah, I'm a professional at that.
Yeah, so guys, if the bull runs off and nothing happens, well, great. But if you keep calling and he does come back, well, now you have another opportunity. That's all I'm saying. I just depend to quit calling.
Can I ask you a few questions about that real quick? Because what you just described there, that happens to me all the time, where I'll be calling And whether I know a bull is out there or not, if I get him responding, obviously I know he's there. And then you have the ones that kind of come in silent, and then you realize you kind of screwed up and you got busted. That bull buggers off, but it's not like, how sometimes a bull will pop out and like he's got you, like dead to rights. He sees you. He knows exactly what you are. He knows you don't belong, and bam, he's gone 20 zip codes away by the time you can even blink. But then there's the other ones that they're more of like that unsure, cautionary, I'm just moving on. And they kind of bugger off. Sometimes it's fast, but they're still not totally sure what they saw. And I can never get them to come back at that point. So can you walk us through when you've buggered one off, they maybe spotted you or whatever, but again, unsure of what you were and buggered off. What are you doing to get those bulls to come back in?
Well, for one thing, like I said, I don't quit calling because they're used to. I mean, they have a dialogue. They talk to each other all the time. I don't quit calling. I'll move from my position from where he may have spooked or wherever he spooked from that he thought he saw something he didn't like. I'll move to a different position, just not far away, but I'll keep calling. But I don't. The thing is, when you get a bull approaching you, a lot of the guys will do this. And I'm going to use my call here.
Okay.
So a lot of guys will do this. Okay, so they'll do that, and the bull. I mean, he's got you pinned. He'll come right in, and he's got you pinned. So let's say I called that bull in, he pinned me and ran off. Okay, so what I've learned in something like that, when I get a bull coming in, this is what I do instead. Okay, I'm going to use the call again.
Okay.
See how it toned that way down?
Yeah, and for those of you listening, if you had a hard time, like back that up and turn it up, because I actually it's better if you just describe it, Rob. Kind of talk us through your.
So if you tone it down, instead of you tone it down when they're coming in, so you want him to look for you. You don't want him to know exactly where you are and spot you, or by your sound, know where you are exactly. So if you tone it down, way down, and keep calling, I mean, this will work for me. I mean, a lot of guys.
That makes perfect sense.
Guys get, they're like, man, you call way too much. I'm like, okay, well, I've got, a ton of bulls on my wall. So, you tell me that I'm calling too much. Anyways, the thing is that once, if you spook a bull off and you quit calling, okay, well, he loses interest pretty quick.
Yeah.
And moves on with something else. But if you keep calling, I called in a bull 2 years ago, and he came, he was 300 yards up on the top of the ridge, came right down to me. I videotaped him, came into 18 yards, and I let him go. I didn't shoot him.
Wow.
I let him go. And then, so it was getting evening time. So I walked back to my truck, and that bull shadowed me for about 300 yards as I walked to my truck. He'd pop out. He'd give me one of these little, and I'd call back to him. He'd call back to me, and he shadowed me the whole way to not the whole way to my truck, but almost to the truck.
Wow. You know what really stands out with the difference between those two call sequences that you were just kind of showing? The one that you're saying works really well is when you're toning it down like that and kind of hiding the sound in a way to make him look for you. The other one sounds like a panicked cow, which it like the light bulb just kind of went off in my head, because I've done that a million times where I'm like, meow, meow. But that's like stressing the bull out, probably. I mean, would you agree with that? It's like, okay, no, that's a panicked cow, where what you were doing, and a panicked cow means he probably needs to skedaddle. But what you were doing is like a curiosity. Hey, come and see me. Come and see me. Where are you at?
That's kind of the picture you're trying to paint in their mind, is that you want them to come look for you. And I've called in cows that way, where where you do that. When I was doing the first call sequence I was doing, where it's a little louder, and I've actually carried on a dialogue with elk that way, where she's talking to me, I'm talking to. I got a decoy out, and I've got a big ass elk decoy, and I have it in front of me, and I'm doing a sequence call like that. And the cows, I have a dialogue going on with a cow, and I keep looking around the decoy that I'm holding in my hands, and she's coming, and she literally walks right up to me where I poke my head out to the side, and she's standing 5 feet in front of me, looking at the butt of the decoy, and still carry on a dialogue with me. Now, she's expecting, me to do something, and then another cow comes around to my right, and now she's beside me, so she can see the cow that I have a dialogue with. Someone's coming in silent. She comes in, and then she moves off real quick. So this cow moves off, and the 5x6 bull is standing there, maybe 15 yards away. And my buddy that we're hunting together, he didn't have a shot. I mean, I could have killed that bull easily. He was standing there 15 yards away. And they almost
he had no idea you were there, huh?
Well, yeah, he did. He knew I was there because they were all looking at the decoy.
Oh, got you.
And I'm standing in the willows, and I have the decoy, and they're all looking at me, and my buddy is off to the right, but he doesn't really have a shot because of the brush. So they move off, and then as they move off, I still have this dialogue going on with this cow. So I said, I know where they're going. Let's go. So we moved through the brush, and there's an opening about maybe 80 yards away. And I keep moving towards the opening, and they come with me. They shadow me. So when I said, we got to get to the opening before they do.
Are you calling while you're moving? Is that using
I'm calling
calls?
Yes, I'm calling the whole time. I moved out into the opening, and I told my buddy John, I said, okay, get ready because they're going to pop out. We got to get there before they do. We popped out into the opening. I'm calling. I got the decoy out, and the bull pops out 88 yards away from John. And I thought it was a cow, and I'm looking with the decoy. I've got the bull's full attention on me, and John shoots that bull at 88 yards.
Wow, that's a long shot.
Yeah.
Cool.
Tell me. And he killed it. He killed it. I'd have never made that shot. He's a competition shooter. He shoots all the time.
Yeah.
But the call sequence is what brought that bull to us. Mm-hmm. And the way I work those elk. I mean, I don't know. You've probably had elk smell you and spook and run off. That. And I got, everybody tells me, once they smell you, that's over. They're done. They're never coming back. And that's not true. I've called in tons of elk after they've smelled me.
Back a couple months ago, I did an episode with Brandon Maddox, who is the founder and owner of Silencer Central. You should listen to that episode. It's episode 197. I love this company. I love this brand, and I love the American-made product that Silencer Central produces. I use the Banish 30 on my hunting rifle, and if you guys follow me on Instagram and you saw that video I put together, you'll see that it's not like what Hollywood portrays it as. It's not like it silences the rifle down into nothing. But it makes a huge difference. Like, my ears don't ring when I shoot. The animals don't know where the shot is coming from. It disorients the sound. And Silencer Central makes it super easy for you guys. Jump on to silencercentral.com and pick one out. You could ship your rifle to them. They'll thread your barrel. They'll ship it back. This is like a 10-day process. And the ATF process is shortened significantly. It's like down to 48 hours or less. It's the best time ever to get a silencer on your weapon, and you should check it out because it really is a game changer. SilencerCentral.com is where you can find them, or you can call 866-891-4494, and they're happy to answer questions. It's crazy. They actually have people that answer their phone. Again, guys, go to SilencerCentral.com. It's one of my favorite sponsors out there. These guys are just absolutely world-class. with these world-class products, and I can't recommend putting a silencer on your hunting rifle enough. Save your ears, disorient the sound in case you need another shot. I mean, it's a game changer, folks. Check it out. You know, back in the old days, there was this program called Layaway, where you can go into like a store and start making payments on something, some high-dollar ticket item, and once you paid that off every month, it was yours. You could take it home. That's how I bought my first deer rifle from the Marine Corps PX on Camp Lejeune in North Carolina. And it was the first, weapon that I bought that I purchased myself. It wasn't a hand-me-down. It wasn't my dad's. It wasn't anything like that. So I went and I picked out this 30-06, and I just didn't have a lot of money. And so I did the layaway program, but I needed a scope on it. And the cheaper scopes were all sold out. And so I bumped up to like this entry-level loophole scope and put that on the layaway program and had them all, put the whole package together for me and all that. Made the payments and finally got to bring it home. Ever since then, almost every rifle I've owned has had a loophole scope. In fact, I'm having a custom rifle built this year, and it's going to have the loophole Mark 5 HD scope on it. I just killed a buffalo with that scope. It's a really great product. And loophole guys, you know them. Everybody knows loophole. They've been around since like 1907. They started as like a special instrument company or something like that. But these American-made products are fantastic. Whether you're looking for a spotter, binos, a rifle scope, accessories, tripods, bipods, all that kind of stuff. You can find it all at loophole.com. And I'd really appreciate if you supported this American company that has a great American story. And I couldn't be a bigger fan of a company, and I'm so happy and thrilled that they've chosen to partner with the Western Huntsman. Thanks to Leupold, and thanks to you guys for supporting our great sponsors. One time was successful calling in an elk that I know he busted me wind-wise, but it's really, really tough. It was only one time that I was successful with that, and I want to get your take on this. My suspicion is when they wind you, and but they can still hear an elk calling, which is you. I think that they don't relate the two together, right? Like they don't think, oh, that's a human making elk sounds. I think that they think, man, I hear that elk over there, but I smelled a human. That other elk better get out of here too, kind of thing. I don't know. I always wonder what goes through their mind, but what is your take on that? Because I've had a tough time calling it back after they've been or they winded me.
Well, I think that it depends on a lot of it has to do with areas that people hunt. Now, I think that elk, and I don't know how rural of an area is or how far away from human contact elk live where you hunt.
Well, I have elk that come on my property. I'm in Northwest Montana, so I'll come. I'll get my butt kicked on the mountain and come home and listen to them bugle off my back deck at night.
Okay, so see, all those elk are conditioned already to humans. Okay, yeah. So they're conditioned. So because they're conditioned, they know what a human smells like, and they're just like everything else. Everything smells different. Every human smells different. Some guys wear cologne, some guys don't. Some women wear cologne. Some, you know what I mean. So everyone smells different anyway, but they're conditioned already to human behavior, human movement. But they're so in tune to their environment that if a squirrel runs off and chatters, they know it's a squirrel. So. I called in a 6-point bull one year, and he hung up at 12 yards, and I thought to myself, okay, if he moves another 10 yards, he's gonna right in my path where he's gonna smell me, right? Mm-hmm. But hang up at about 12 yards, but he doesn't want to come in. I haven't drawn back yet, and he's hang up at 12 yards, and he moves if he moves to the left, he's gonna smell me. If he moves to my right, it'll be better. But I don't have a shot because it's just too thick right there. So I keep doing that really low call, keeping his interest, and he just keeps looking for me. I'm not moving. I'm just standing in the trees. I'm not moving, but I'm keep calling low, and he just keeps looking. And every now and then he'd let out that little, just a little bit of a buzz. Mm-hmm. and he doesn't want to. He doesn't want to come into the tree line where I am. He just wants me to go out to him. So he keeps giving me these little subtle calls for me to go to him. I don't want to move because he can see me. He's not looking at me, but he can see me if I move.
Yeah.
I can see him perfectly, but I don't have a shot. I haven't even drawn my bow back yet. So he's to my right. So I call. So he's checking the wind. So he knows he's got to go to the left to catch my scent. So he goes to the left, catches my scent, and turns to run off. And I hit him right away with some calls. And he stops, turns around, and comes back towards me again. Now I pour on some more sweet calls, and he decides to come into the woods where I am. Well, I hadn't even drawn back yet. So as he's coming in, he stops. And again, you know how they do. They stop right where you don't have a shot. But now it's super wide open. He's looking right in my direction. I'm doing the calls. He's looking right at me. I don't have a shot. Then he takes one step forward, and I have a shot. He's opened the lane for a shot, but I haven't drawn back yet. And he's looking right at me the whole time. He's looking at me. So I do this. I draw my bow back, and I shot him.
How are you doing that sound? Is that with a reed?
Yep, that's a crow call.
Yeah.
Now, see, they know what crows are. So because he heard me doing a crow call, he knows what that is. But it threw him for a minute because he's looking at me drawing my bow back, and he's like, "What the heck?" It took him a minute to process what he was looking at, because they're always going to believe what they hear before what they see.
Oh, that's a good line. That's a good line. That's gonna be one of those lingering lines that.
Yeah, they're always going to believe what they hear before they see. So I do a crow call, and he just stands there. I'd shot him. Now, and it doesn't work every time, but I've done that at least 4 times. Got a bull.
I wish I would have recorded this and heard you talk about that before last season. I want to run this scenario by you, and then I have some questions. I want to back up a little bit, but last season I had located a bull via a bugle. He was kind of below me, and I had to wait him out for a few hours because of the way the winds were. I couldn't quite move down there, but once the winds shifted, I started going down into this darker timber, and I'd do some real light, unaggressive kind of locator type bugles, and he'd answer back with kind of the same thing. But he was more interested in me than I thought he was, because I came out into kind of a flat on this. It was like a east-facing slope where it had been real dark and thick timber, and then it was still dark timber, but there wasn't the brush. It was almost kind of park-like in this flat. And I came out there real shadowy, still real kind of dark. The sun's kind of, heading towards the west, whatever. And in the corner of my eye, I see this brown thing, and I know instantly it's that bull. And I turn my head and look at him. He's looking right at me. He's 40 yards wide open. And I just stopped, and I kind of stood behind this big tree. I kind of stopped behind this big tree, and I'd peek around it, and he's just staring at me, just giving me the evil eye. He didn't know what I was. And I think because I had this big pack on, I have a feeling he thought I was an elk, because he didn't bugger off, even though he saw me walking down into there. And this has happened to me a few times. But anyway, I kind of stood there. I turned my head away in the opposite direction of where the bull was, and started doing these cow calls, but they were kind of aggressive cow calls. And I was all I needed him to do was take like 4 steps, and I could have popped an arrow into him. Anyway, he decides to turn around and go into this alder-brush. I ended up calling him back in and actually got a shot off on him, but I missed him. I misgauged the distance. He was a good bull. I would have been beside myself if I would have actually killed this thing. But In that situation back on that flat where we're having almost like this staring contest, in that case, would you have done those really light cow calls that you were doing to kind of entice him to come looking for you? Is that what you think?
Yeah. Anytime they get close, you have to tone it way down. They can hear, 50 times better than we can.
Yeah.
And so you tone that way down and make him come look for you. I mean, and sometimes they'll just stand there for a long, long time. I mean, minutes, 5-10 minutes go by and he just stand there and doesn't move and just listen.
Yeah.
And as long as you keep making those calls, you have his interest, but tone it way down because, more aggressive calling says there's more excitement going on. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But
yeah.
if you're whispering at him in cow calls, he's like, okay, well, and if he's making, and then listen to him. Try and listen to the sound that he's making. He may be making some really low calls that you can't even hear him.
Mm-hmm.
At 40 yards because he's making calls back to you, but you can't hear him because his calls are so low. But if he was really talking to an elk, another elk would be able to hear him because their hearing is just 10 times better than ours.
Yeah.
So audibly, you need that. I mean, anytime that you get a bull coming in or a cow, whatever you're hunting, as far as an elk is concerned, you tone it way, way down when they get close.
So can we back up a little bit because we're talking a lot about, once we've found a bull and one way or the other, he's either coming in quiet or he's responding, he's bugling, whatever. How are you finding now? I know that you've got spots and I know what you mean because, I spent most of my adult life in Idaho and I stopped scouting over there because I knew where all the elk were, but I still had to get out there, and sometimes they were on the upper part of the drainage versus maybe down further towards the flat or whatever. So I'd have to get in there and locate them, and it's real thick timber up here, and so it's calling is really how you locate these bulls because it's just not visible. I mean, it's a jungle. So, for you, when you initially you leave the truck, you're walking in. Are you throwing out locator bugles to initially get an idea as to where the elk are at, or are you visually finding them because it's more open country down there? Tell me a little bit about locating elk.
Okay, so I call all the time. Okay, so let's say if you picture a mountain, okay, a valley. Okay, you're going to hunt this valley, and a lot of hunters will get out in their truck and start hiking up the mountain, and they'll find a spot and they'll call, and then they'll move 3, maybe, I don't know, 50, 60 yards, and they'll call again. Then they'll maybe move 100 yards and call again. Then maybe move 150 yards and call again. And, I don't do that. I get out, I start hiking, and the whole time I'm walking, I'm doing that the whole time I'm walking.
When you're doing that, Rob, does that elicit bugle responses from down the drainage or whatever?
Yes,
so it does. Okay.
Here's the deal. So, if you let's say there's an elk 3/4 of the way down from we're talking about the same little drainage, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's a bull elk 3/4 of the way down the valley, and you're working your way up above him 100 yards or 200 yards. Okay, so now if I'm calling and moving all the way across that mountain, calling the whole time, that bull is going to hear me. But if I'm only calling every 100 yards or so, I may walk right by him. He'd never hear me because topography, trees, grass, shrubs, everything makes such a difference when it comes to calling. I mean, you could be, I could be 100 yards away from an elk over a little ridge, and I would never hear him, and he would never hear me.
Yeah.
So topography makes a huge difference. So I call all the time, and this is some of the things that the guys get upset with me because when they hunt with me, they're like, "Dude, you call way too much," and then all of a sudden the bill will bugle, and they're like, "Oh heck," you know.
I take it back. So
if you think about it this way, if you're in the mall, okay, and you're sitting there with your wife and you're talking, and yeah, you're talking about your kids or whatever, and some guy is, around the corner, and he's fighting with his wife, okay, and they're arguing, and you can hear them. You can't hear them, but they're arguing around the corner. And as they come around the corner, your attention goes to them because they're arguing, and your wife looks at you and says, "Well, what's going on with them?" Okay, as they walk towards you, you can hear them louder and louder and louder. And when they get right across from you, you can actually hear the words they're saying. Mm-hmm. But then as they walk away from you, it gets less and less and less and less until you can't hear them anymore. Okay. Yeah. So, and then you sit there and look at your wife and say, "Well, what was that all about?" Okay, so same thing on the mountain. The elk is down here. You're above them, working your way across, talking the whole time, cow calling the whole way. So that bull, he's not making a sound. He's not bugling. You walk right by him, right above him, or right by him. As you're walking away, he lets out a peep. He lets out a, "Hey, come here, hey, ladies." Then you heard him. So now you're like, "Man, we just walked through there." So see, he's coming to look for you. So now the game is on. So see, now if I had called half, a quarter of the way up and then halfway up, that bull would have never even heard me. Yeah. I would have never got a response from him. So because I call all the time, and I'm not bugling, I'm just cow calling.
That's what I was going to ask you. Is at any point are you bugling, or is it just the cow calling?
So I'm just doing the cow call primarily. I get to an outcropping of rocks or a point where my bugle will carry. Mm-hmm. That's when I want to bugle. That's when I'll throw out a bugle because I want my bugle to carry. But I call in more elk using more bulls using cow calls than a bugle. Sure, if you get a location, if you bugle and you get a bull located, and you get him going, my son and DJ and I, we'll work a mountainside, and I can throw bugles out there and not get a response, and he can throw a bugle out there, and the bull will respond to every bugle he makes, but none of the bugles I make. Yeah. So it just all depends on what they want to hear, and so if you get a response from a bull, if I get a response from a bull bugling, I feel like the game's on. So now I'll tone it down. I'll start doing the cow call thing, and if he's responding to the cow calls, it's like you're like a fishing lure that you just cast it out there and you're bringing him into you. Mm-hmm. If he's responding to the cow calls. Now, if he's only responding to bugles, then that's what we have to use. So I'm sitting there with a bunch of buddies of mine, and we had hunted all morning and hadn't heard one single bugle all day. And we're sitting down, and I said, "Well, let's get out of here. Let's head down to the truck. We'll go somewhere else." And we're sitting down. We break out our packs and get some drinks and stuff. We're just talking, and the whole time we're talking, I'm calling and stuff. And then one of the guys says, "Man, do you ever do one of them really aggressive, mean bugles?" I said, typically, no, I don't usually do that. And he goes, "Can you do that?" And I said, "You mean like this?" And I did it. And right away, right below us, a response.
Really?
I was like, "Whoa." Yeah. And I said, "Man." So you see, the whole time I had been bugling regular bugles and cow calls, he didn't want to hear that. As soon as I gave him that really super aggressive bugle, man, he was up for a fight. I said, "Okay, so let's go. Game on." We dropped down off the hill and we hiked in, and that bull was out in I saw him walking out into an opening, and then he just dropped, disappeared. I was like, "What the heck?" I said, "Did you guys see that? He just disappeared." He goes, "Yeah, what the heck?" I said, "I don't know." And then I could hear splashing. I said, "Oh, you know what? I bet you there's a wallow right there."
Oh,
So,
he dropped down into a wallow.
so
Yeah,
I did another really aggressive bugle, and he jumped up, all muddy. I said, "Oh man, look at him!" And he just ripped out this really mean bugle. I ripped back at him, and so he got mad and just started all aggressively walking towards us with stiff legs, like.
Just a
And
monster. I love it.
I told my buddy, I said, "Okay, man, get ready." I said, as soon as he gets close enough, you can take the shot." And every time I hit him, I hit him with a cow call. He didn't care. He didn't care. As soon as I hit him with that aggressive bugle, I backed off. I said, "You guys stay right here at the edge of the timber. I'm going to go into the timber." And I walked into the timber about 40 yards, and I ripped out a big old bugle, mean bugle, and he come trotting in. And then as soon as he got across from those guys, I started hitting him with some cow calls, and he stopped, and they shot him.
Nice.
So it just all depends on what they want to hear. Some guys.
Yeah, totally.
So you think about it this way: you're at a bar, and you're sitting there, and you've been talking, to this gal, and then the guy gets mad because you're talking to her, and he comes up to you and starts and is just all mad at her. You know what I mean? He's not really mad at you. He's mad at her because she's talking to you.
Sure.
And she gets up and walks off, and you're like, "Hey man, what's the deal? What are you pissed off about?" "Oh yeah," and he starts yelling and stuff. You walk off. He's gonna come. He just wants to fight.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the kind of the thing that happened that day with that bull. He just wanted to fight. He didn't care. It was in the middle of the rut. He didn't care. He just. And from what I think what happened with that bull is that at some point before we got there, he had probably gotten run out by a bigger bull. So,
yeah, that's probably true. It's what's interesting about that is, like, if you would have come across that bull the day before or the day after, he may not have wanted to fight. It's a lot of this is just a timing thing. I had a bull one time. I knew he was down there. I knew this area that had this nice wallow in it. Fresh sign. It just about the stench of the elk would just about knock you over. I knew he was in there, and he would not respond to my bugles. But as soon as I added a few chuckles at the end of the bugle, all of a sudden he'd go absolutely nuts. And like he was really close. So he wouldn't respond to just a straight bugle. But as soon as I added a few chuckles, it was on from there, and he'd chuckle like crazy. So, hey, we need to pause for just a minute because I don't want to pee my pants. Let's take a quick little pause break here. Okay, guys, we're back. We took a pee break. We're good now. So I know I've kept you. Well, we've been recording here for like an hour, but are you good for a little bit longer?
Yeah. We got all day.
Okay. I was hoping to kind of ask you a series of like lightning round questions. This is something I used to do on School of September, and I stopped doing it, but I think it's really important information because everybody's take on these kind of things is it varies, and sometimes it varies because the geography is different. Like I could tell by the way you're describing some of the country you're hunting. It's fairly different than the type of country I'm hunting. But we've got listeners they're going to be hunting, that's open sage country in, I don't know, central Utah or Arizona or something, or some of the plains out in Wyoming or eastern Montana. And so, obviously, and this is to the listeners, keep that in mind that there's a lot of variances and nuances to the geography and the terrain and the country that you're hunting. But Rob, what's your opinion on the moon phase and how that affects rutting elk and vocalizing how vocal the elk are?
Well, I think that the moon phase actually really does have an effect on what they do, just because a big bright moon, they're up all night feeding and that kind of thing. But as far as when the rut is on, I think they're still going to do what they do. I mean, I've killed elk in all phases of the moon, so I'm not specific. A lot of guys are with whitetail and mule deer and that kind of thing. They're so specific about moon phases and that kind of stuff, and the activities that the animals go into. Like a lot of them go into nocturnal or that kind of thing, and I understand that, but I think that as far as elk are concerned, regardless whether it's a full moon or not, as long as you're proficient with calling, that's, I think, like I told you, they will believe what they hear before what they see. So,
yeah, I love that line.
I've killed elk in at every moon phase. I've killed a lot of elk.
Yeah,
and my biggest elk is I've killed a 377 class bull.
Nice. Not me.
20,
Not me.
20 elk.
One day. And I tend to agree with what you said there. I guess my take on, I think, the whole moon phase thing is it's kind of evolved over the years, but like it doesn't really change the fact that I'm going to be hunting, because September's only going to be here for 1 month, and I'm not going to let the moon phase slow me down. So next question would be weather. Like, does your strategy change? No, actually, before I get there, let's say you're hunting. It's mid-September, closing in on kind of peak rut. And a rainstorm comes in, whether it's just a quick storm, thunderstorm, whatever, or like it's an all-day soaking. What does a good storm do to the elk, in your opinion, and what changes for you?
Well, I think they're still going to do what they're going to do, regardless whether it's raining or not. Big thunder claps and that kind of thing, that makes a difference, I think, in like, let's say you're working a bull and all of a sudden a storm, like you said, a storm pops up and it's one of them big thunderclapping storms. They generally will shut down then, So weather, I think, because they have their internal barometer, they can tell when it's going to be time to feed and pause the rut for a minute. Let's feed up because it's we don't know if it's going to snow, that kind of thing, So that, I believe, I've seen it shut them down. I've had elk, we've been working a bull for a couple of days, and then all of a sudden, a big thunderstorm comes in, and the temperature drops, and their barometric pressure drops, and so that internal barometer that they have sends them into feeding mode, and they kind of pause the rut. Not that the bulls aren't still interested; they just will, not be as in tune to chasing now. That's different if they're actually coming into estrus at the time. Then all bets are off. But I think I've. Again, do you really want to shoot a bull when it's raining like crazy? Because the tracking and that kind of thing, my buddy shot a big 342 class bull at 8 yards. And it started raining before that, and it turned into a torrential downpour. And I told Dan, dude, man, I can't believe this rain. But there's no blood. You couldn't find any blood. But fortunately, the bull had run straight downhill. We could track him by where he had run down the hill.
Yeah.
And, he piled up at the bottom of the hill. But again, a rainstorm, you gotta think, use your head about, do I really want to shoot an elk when it's raining? Because of, you can shoot an elk
for blood trails.
Yeah, he could go down right there, or he could go a half mile. You'll never find him, and that's happened before. And it's hunting,
Yep, it is.
I can't, I'm not going to say that I've lost a couple of bulls, because I've lost a couple of bulls because, not because of rain, but just because, they do what they do, and it's hunting, I talked to my brother, and we were talking to a bunch of guys one time, at, the Jamboree here in Colorado. And I mentioned that I'd lost a couple of bulls, and my brother pulled me aside later on and said, "Dude, why do you tell people that?" I said, because it's real. It
Yeah.
just happened.
I say it all the time. I've told the
No.
stories on this show of the bulls that I've lost,
Yeah.
and one of them was kind of because of the rainstorm kind of ruined the blood trail. But I also didn't hit him very well, and so he went further than he should have if I'd have been a better archer at the time, And so, okay, so when on the same topic of weather patterns and strategy and all that kind of stuff. You've got one day that is totally clear, blue skies, sunny, 65 to 75 degrees. You've got the next day that is 60 degrees and overcast, but not rainy. You've got another day that's kind of on and off rainy here and there, and then like you've got these opportunities of pre-rainstorm hunts and post-rainstorm hunts. Out of those conditions, do you have like a favorite one you like to hunt the most? Because it's just been, for some reason, whether we can explain it or not, you've had a lot of success in that kind of weather pattern.
Overcast days. Overcast days are gold.
Yeah,
and overcast day. Overcast day is cooler temperatures, and overcast days, it's you. I can have, or I have had, I should say, elk activity all day long.
Yeah.
On an overcast day. On a bright, sunny day, it's morning and evening. They go to bed, and they'll do they do their thing in the morning, and they do their thing in the evening on a sunny, hot day. And occasionally you'll get a bull to do his thing around noon, that kind of thing. If it's when they get up and start feeding again, that kind of thing, you may get a bull going. But typically mornings and evenings when it's hot and dry. A rainy, overcast. Sunny, overcast. Those are good days too.
Yeah.
Not as good as an overcast day all day, but you get into it. I mean, you ever hunted Colorado?
I have not. I fished Colorado, but I've never hunted Colorado.
Do you put in for points or anything?
I don't. Not for Colorado. I do in some other states, but I haven't in Colorado, and I probably should.
Yeah, you should be putting in for. I mean, just an extension for you. If you start putting in for Colorado and you draw, and you get yourself, if you plan like a 5-year coming to Colorado in 5 years or something like that, you'll have five preference points that you can use in a good unit. And I got some really good spots up here that I could take you to that you would really enjoy, I think.
Oh man. Yeah. Well, we'll talk about that, because I'd love to do it. I just, like you said, I need to start putting in the points, and I got a little overwhelmed with the point systems in multiple different states, and like I told you before we started recording, I'm not the sharpest knife in the drawer, so I kind of keep it simple. I hunt Idaho. I'm building points in like Wyoming, and I'm building points in Montana. I live in Montana now, and so it's just where the heck else? Oh, I've got points in Arizona, and so anyway, Colorado is a good option. And I wanted to go back to one of the points you just made. Those rainy kind of on and off days. I love those days. But my favorite is that overcast day. Gosh, I'm drawing a blank on my next question though. This happens sometimes.
So is your go-to call a single read, triple read, double read? What do you use?
Yeah, just a single mouth read. I use a mouth read. I have an external read I can't remember what it's called. It's, I'm a big Phelps guy, so it's all Phelps stuff. And then I have a bugle tube that I've been using when I can't remember. It was probably 4 or 5 years ago when they released it, and I get sentimental about some of this gear, so I've been carrying the same bugle tube for several years, but. So that's what I do. And so my basic strategy, whether I'm hunting for myself or if I'm guiding or whatever, is I do cover country. I cow call a lot, and I locate bugle a lot, and I chuckle a lot. I get a lot of responses from chuckles, and I don't know what's changed with that, because it used to not happen like that. But over the last 4 or 5 years, the chuckles they've paid dividends for me. So
has your technique changed?
I don't know. Not really. I think it has. It used to be my goal used to be to get out there and try to piss every bull off that I could find. Talk smack about his mom and everything else. But I don't do that anymore.
Like you were saying, like 5 years ago, were your chuckles different 5 years ago than they are now?
I don't know. They might have been. I don't know. I think that I don't think they've changed much. I still do the same thing. I can tell you a couple things that have changed is the way that I do those locator bugles. I used to do these really perfect sounding Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation calling contest type locator bugles. And I really made them a lot rougher since. I've switched those up to where they sound like I'm either a beginner elk caller or a younger bull or a lazy bull. I guess they're messy, and I get a lot more responses.
Do you think that you see a lot of call companies and people say that a young bull is you're going to call more elk and using what we call a young bull bugle.
I don't.
You subscribe to that or not?
No, I don't. I don't,
because it's not really. They all sound so. I mean, my son DJ called in a raghorn bull that we thought was the bull of the woods.
Yeah,
and he was exactly aggressive.
I love those little raghorns. Those little raghorns are my friend. and I'll shoot them every time because I know exactly what you're saying, Rob.
Yeah, I mean what I'm saying is, a lot of guys will subscribe to the fact that you need to sound like this. You need to sound like that.
There's no such thing.
When I'm talking to somebody about bugles, I just, what I tell you is, if you and I were talking about this, and I would tell you that just sound like an elk the best that you can. Whether that, and they're gonna respond to what they're gonna respond to. Like I told you, I do my bugles and nothing, and DJ bugles and boom. Or it's the opposite. He throws bugles out and nothing, and then I'm bugling and they're responding to me.
That bull that I was telling you about, where I kind of dropped down into that flat and we were having a stare down contest. Yeah. I wasn't able to get a great look at him, but my initial reaction is he was somewhere between a 330 and a 350 class bull. He for Northwest public land Montana or North Idaho, that he would have been an absolute banger bull. But when he initially responded to my bugles, when I first heard him, I thought my gut instinct was he was a little raghorn, because that's what he sounded like. And so the point is like, who's to say what sounds like a young bull versus what sounds like a real big mature bull? Now, sometimes you'll get those real deep, guttural, growly kind of bulls that sound off, and those usually materialize into a pretty mature bull, and they're the ones that I can't ever seem to get an arrow in. Like, they outsmart me every time, but I can usually get a look at them, and and then I scare them off or whatever. But That's the only consistency I found, is that real guttural, growly thing. That's usually going to be a 6-point or better. But I've also heard that same type of bull sound like a spike chasing after his mom because he wants milk or something, Yeah. And so I just don't think that there's a way to really tell based on the bugle that you're hearing, because sometimes you'll have this huge monster bull laying in his bed at midday moaning. He's not bugling. He's not really doing much. He just kind of moans at you. You don't know if that's a great big bull or a little raghorn, because they all do that sound. And another time that, and I've told this story on the show before, but there's this elk farm in Post Falls, Idaho, that you can go feed carrots to this like darn near 400 class bull, this domesticated bull. When you show up with carrots and he sees you with the carrots, he squeals like a little schoolgirl, and he does these real feminine sounding cow mews. He's just going meow, meow, as he's coming up because he's excited for a carrot. So to try to put like a bead on, oh well, that sound, that's a 6-year-old bull for sure, or that's a raghorn, or that's a spike. I just don't think that exists. And from the standpoint of being able to identify it, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree. That's why that's kind of why I have a problem with some of the call companies that say, "Oh, this is a herd bull. This is a herd bull call. This is a medium bull." You know what I mean? That's all marketing. That's all that is.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And I use one call. I have one call that I do everything with. Mm-hmm. What do you? I mean, you mentioned turkeys, so you use turkey calls.
Yeah,
and you elk calls. And have you ever done a crow call?
Not as good as you. I do it without a reed. I've done the crow calls. I've done that for turkeys. That's a really good way to get them to gobble.
Yeah.
But usually I just use a mouth reed or my little pot call. I use a box call too. The box call, actually, I've had better success than the pot call. But yeah.
Yeah. So, with your reed, what other animals can you sound like with your reed?
With my elk reed?
Yeah.
Or turkey reed?
Either one.
I don't know. I don't know that I've really tried to go away from that. I've called in coyotes with my elk reed, making that rabbit in distress sound. I've called in bears using the same reed that I bugle in bulls by doing kind of like a fawn in distress sound, a real like a calf call. Yeah. That's worked, for me and whatnot. But yeah, that I don't know that I've done all that.
Okay, here's some schooling for you. Here's some work for you to work on.
Okay, I like it.
Okay,
I like it. This is the school of September.
Take your reed and start trying to think in your head what other calls you can make with that same reed. Okay, not you're not going to get 10 reeds to do different calls. Just going to use one reed to make the calls that I'm going to give you. Mm-hmm. So you mentioned a bear. Okay, so a bear call. Want to hear a bear call? That's how I do a bear call.
Yeah, do it. Yeah, I'd love to. I love bear hunting. Oh, wow. Have you called in bears doing that?
Yes, sir.
Really?
Yep. Really? I have a bear. I have a bear mounted in my house that I called that way.
It was worth me getting you on the show just to hear that, because I would have never thought to try to attempt a bear sound with an elk reed.
Bears are boars are territorial. They don't like to have other boars in their area, and they'll kill all the cubs just to get a sow back into heat.
Oh yeah.
So they don't like other boars. So if you do,
that's pretty impressive. Okay.
Try doing that.
I was just looking for my elk reed, and I can't find it. I don't have one handy. I must have. They must be in my truck. But I'll try it.
So there's that. Okay.
What other calls can you do with that elk reed?
Okay. So there's a crow. Then there's a raven. Ravens sound different than crows.
Wow. Everybody that spent time on the mountain is going to recognize these sounds. That's fantastic.
Yeah. So that's that. And there's this.
That is amazing.
There's that. Okay.
Yep.
Wow.
What reed? I am really curious. What reed are you using?
I'll tell you what else.
Which one did you say it was?
This, my go-to call is a Native by Carlson 2.5.
2.5?
Yep, and I've used this.
Sounds good.
I have used this reed for years. This is my go-to. It's the only reed I use, and it's I make all those calls using the same reed. Here's what my chuckles. Here's what my chuckles sound like.
Okay. Yeah.
Those
sound great. Yep. See, that would be a chuckle. I always say that the way you can differentiate between a real elk and another hunter, is by the chuckles. You would fool me. You would call me in.
I've called plenty of hunters in, but
me too. Yeah.
So if you just think about what you can do with your reed. That's you can do all that stuff with the one reed.
Gosh, amazing.
So an elk know what a crow sounds like. So you can use that to your advantage. Like I said, it may not work every time, but the time it does work might be the bull of the woods that you get to get a shot off on.
Yeah, and the point with all of this is there's no such thing as something that exists that works every time in the elk woods, right? And so the whole point of this is just loading our mental toolbox with as many tips and things. And now I have to cut loose here pretty quick because I for my day job I have a roofing company and I've got to go look at a roof today. And so I've now on my way to town to go look at a roof, I'm going to be practicing that bear call and some of those other calls you were doing. I really like the coyote call. That's pretty impressive with an elk reed.
Yeah. So I think that I'll do your bugle just before you got to go. So
yeah, definitely. I'd love to hear your bugles. Yeah, that deep guttural sound you do at the end of that is money. I wish we were in person so I can it would pick up better, but that sounds great.
Yeah, once we're off this podcast and everything, I'll send you some information from me, and because if I'm ever in your area, I would love to hey, let's go have some lunch and
I'd love to. Come on. Yeah,
I don't know if you ever come to Colorado, but if you ever do, then the invite is there for you to hit me up for we can sit down and do
an in-person one. Yeah. Well, I do periodically go through Colorado or come to Colorado, whatever. And if you ever find yourself in Northwest Montana, you and Jon, you guys definitely let me know. We'll set it up so you just come into the studio here, and we'll do one in person. So, Jan, you didn't say much. Are you really shy, or are you just rather let Rob do the talking? What's going on?
Well, no, he explains things very thoroughly.
Yes, he does.
And a lot of this we've conversed about before. It's good to hear it again,
Yeah. Yeah, I could tell, Rob, you're a wealth of information when it comes to, there's a lot to be said about 40 years of experience in the Elkwoods. That's what, like I had Joe Gilly on last month for School of September, and he's, 40 some odd years in the Elkwoods. I think that sometimes I would caution the younger generation, because I know, because I've been in the younger generation before. There was a time when I didn't have all this gray in my glorious beard. And so I'm cautioning them that the tendency is to sometimes not give credit where credit is due, and maybe blow off some of the things you hear from the guys that have been doing this for a long time. But the thing is, and as you age and as you start getting a little bit more salt and pepper going in your own beard, you start realizing that with time and experience comes this level of wisdom. And if you're wise enough when you're young to soak that information up, you're going to be much wiser when you're like my age. So guys like Rob Gonzales here, these are the kind of people we learn from. These are the kind of people that have the information that is invaluable to us, because now, a few months from now, it's going to be September. You're going to be in the Elkwoods. You're going to be in a situation, and you're going to be able to reach back into your mind and be like, man, you know what Rob Gonzales said on School of September was, in this situation, I need to do some quiet elk calls, because elk like to confirm and hear it first and then see it. And they want to believe how did you say that, Rob? They want to believe what they hear before they believe what they see. Yes. Okay.
They will always believe what they hear before what they see.
Yes. And I love that line. I'm going to totally use that line going forward, as long as you don't have like a copyright patent or something on it.
Well, I just want to add real quick that, one of the biggest things he's helped me with, and it's something I still struggle with to this day, is, our objective when we're out there, at least mine, is obviously it's nice when you kill an elk, cow, bull, doesn't matter. That's always the ultimate goal. But I make my ultimate goal encounters, right? We have to do what it takes to get into the elk. And that's having that skin in the game is where all the benefit comes from, as far as improving as a hunter, because you're not going to learn anything, getting, within 500 yards elk. You're going to learn something when you get into that red zone, or when when you're able to get them into that red zone, or I'm no lampers, I can't, it's very difficult for me to get into their red zone without making my appearance known.
Yeah.
I think we all struggle with that, but
I don't know how that dude does that, but yeah, you're right.
Oh, it's incredible. But if you're fortunate enough to be able to build, and I call it building a rapport with that animal, right? It's like when you're picking up on a chick at the bar, which I haven't done for many years. But I do remember that, you have to build a rapport with an individual. You have to build a relationship with an individual, whether you're a salesman or trying to pick up chicks. I mean, it's all the same thing, trying to close the deal on an animal. You have to verbally build up a relationship with that animal. And if you're able to call that animal in from 400 or 500 yards away, and then when they get within 150 yards, you just clam up. You just close the door on yourself.
Yeah.
Your opportunity is gone. And I still, to this day, when I get a nice big bull that comes running in and he hangs up 100 yards out, which they always do, almost always, right?
Yeah.
Unless you're hop, skipping, and jumping on your way to them, you have to maintain your cool. You got to keep communicating with them. Yeah. I still struggle with that to this day, but I can't tell you how many dozens of opportunities I've squandered because I have failed to maintain that rapport when it counts.
Great information. Yeah, great information. I love it, guys. I mean, I could keep this conversation going for another hour. I wish I could.
Well, you know what? If you ever want to do this again, just let us know.
Yeah, I think we should do it again. In fact, I'm like kicking around the idea of having like this episode just centered around all these unique calls that you're able to do with your elk read. It's pretty fun. So
I can do more stuff too, but that's it for now. But like I said, I think that this is good for good information for everybody, and I hope somebody learned something from my experience, because that's what it's all about. If we're not out there teaching each other what to do and how to do it, then what good is it for everybody else?
Yeah.
And a lot of guys get upset because you share your information, but you know what? We're all in this game together. Why not? You got something to teach me. Teach me.
Yeah. And I say it all the time, but hunters, we have much bigger enemies out there. If we're looking at the future of hunting, than the other guy on the other ridge or the ridge that you think you own. We have much bigger public enemies out there than that. And that's really where the anger and focus should be, and the effort should be, really. So,
Colorado under fire right now. So,
I know.
Once we're done here, will you give me your phone number and stuff, and I'll send you some pictures and stuff like that?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, excuse me, that where I'm recording, I've got the furnace in here, and it like really dries out the air, so I struggle. Sometimes my wife must have cranked the heat up to 150 degrees. Actually, let's wrap it up right now. Rob Gonzales, it was a total honor. Really, really happy to have you on the show. Jon Palmquist, it wasn't an honor, man. I just don't know what to tell you. No, I'm kidding. Absolute honor to have you on. You and I have been talking back and forth on Facebook for a long time, and it's good to actually put like a voice to a message stream that's been going on for a while. And I really appreciate the fact that you thought of me when with your friend Rob here, because it means a lot. These are the kind of people that I really like getting on the show. The folks that are really talented in the elk woods, but nobody knows about them. I really like getting it's information that people are not going to get anywhere else. You know what I mean? And so I just really appreciate that.
No. Oh, Robert's been an asset, man, to everybody that he's come into contact with in this elk arena. So
heck yeah,
without a doubt. I'll take second fiddle to that any day.
Yeah, me too. Well, thanks again, guys. I really appreciate it. We're definitely going to have to do this again. And don't hang up. I'm just going to end the recording here. But before I do that, for those of you listening, thanks a bunch for tuning into the March episode of School of September. We are going to start increasing the amounts of these School of September episodes that we're doing, so stay tuned for that. I want to throw a quick thank you to Loophole Optics, Vantage Point Archery, Barnes Bullets, Phelps Game Calls, and Silencer Central. Without those guys, the show wouldn't exist, so I really appreciate them, and I appreciate all of you who support the sponsors. And I just wanted to ask, guys, if you have a moment, you can write a good review about the show. It really helps the show grow, and it means a lot to me, so thank you to everybody who's done that. Jan and Rob, it was a pleasure. Pleasure was all mine. Thanks a bunch, and I hope we can do this again sometime.
Yeah, likewise.
You made it. That's the end of the episode. Thank you so much for tuning in. Please make sure you're following us on Instagram @TheWesternHuntsman, and write us a good review at Apple Podcasts. Thanks, guys. See you next time. Stay Western, and I'll see you on the mountain.